Hello, I am Shupeng, and this is Zhang Ye. We have come from Baidu Security Lab to talk to you about the evil of spy cameras. We hope that this talk will help you to understand why spy cameras are evil, so we can work to eliminate them from our society. Okay, this is the outline for today's talk. First, we will introduce the subject by talking about the research background of spy cameras and some related news stories. Then we will talk about the structure of spy cameras, demonstrate a simple scanning method, and discuss some of the vulnerabilities we have found. Finally, we will introduce some other detection methods. So to start with, let's look at some news stories about spy cameras using these pictures. For example, you can see that spy cameras can come in many different shapes and sizes. Here is a news story where 1,600 motel guests were secretly streamed live in South Korea. According to the police, tiny cameras with 1 millimeter length were hidden in hair dryer holders, TV boxes, and closed electrical sockets. More than 800 intimate videos were streamed live on website. All 6,800 cases of this kind were reported to the South Korea police in 2018, but many others have gone unreported or undetected. As the picture on the right shows, my life is not your palm. Spy cameras is becoming more and more serious. For example, one of the most popular spy camera apps has been downloaded more than 1 million times on the Google Play Store. Each download could represent a real-world spy camera that is being secretly used to spy on people. As security researchers, we are trying to do something to eliminate this evil. This slide shows some examples of spy cameras that have been discovered in China. Pictures like this tell us what we are dealing with. You can see that most of the cameras have a very small circuit board connected to a power supply and a micro lens. Spy cameras aren't just found in China and South Korea, but all over the world. We just seen what a spy camera looks like, but now let's have a look at a spy camera in disguise. These pictures were taken by Mr. Hua, who introduced the various hiding methods of spy cameras through a video. Spy cameras are usually hidden in ordinary household objects like chargers, air conditioners, behind the toilet, in TV, in the router, in a wall panel, and so on. It's clear that these cameras are very small, even so many can be equipped with infrared night vision and record in 4K HD. As I have mentioned, spy cameras are far more common than you might think. They have become a hot social issue in China and other countries, and are an international problem. The victims are usually hotel guests and renters, and young women are targeted most often. Spy cameras allow a nasty man to sneak a look into other people's private life. It sounds terrible, but we have investigated the problem and we found that there is no reliable way to find these hidden spy cameras. The fact is that no one knows enough about them. I should clarify that we are talking about hidden spy cameras, not the smart home cameras. These hidden spy cameras are small, have a very small lens, and usually modular, and no registration is required to purchase them. They can be easily hidden in air-conditioned units, TVs, routers, patch panels, plug sockets, the list goes on. Because of these characteristics, spy cameras are difficult to find. So, how do we go about trying to find them? Well, first we needed to have a look at some spy camera ourselves. China has banned the sale of spy cameras. Chinese online retailers like Taobao, Jingdong don't sell them. Eventually, we managed to get our hands on some using eBay, Amazon, and other sellers we found using search engineers. We can find that spy cameras are no longer available on Taobao. It seems that China's action are faster. So what to do next? Unfortunately, you still can buy it on eBay. There are some product images of the spy camera. Aren't they very attractive? Due to the slow speed of express delivery, we first start collecting spy camera control apps. For example, we searched for using spy cameras on YouTube. We also slow down the video to find the seller's mobile desktop because usually sellers will install popular spy camera apps. In this picture, we can see many popular spy cameras, such as BV Cam, P2 Cam View, HD spy camera, and each spy camera includes a dedicated menu, which includes a QR code to download the associated app, the default Wi-Fi password, and so on. We found the QR code of app through the item description page of eBay and the video tutorial to prepare for the following analysis. Okay, now I will hand it over to Zhang Ye.
Okay, now let's look at the structure of spy camera and how to analyze it. We purchased a number of different models of camera from multiple sellers. Our goal was to find a simple, fast, and a reliable way to discover if a spy camera was present in any room. We tried all kinds of traditional methods but could not find a solution. For example, we often look for devices emitting a red light to find cameras, but this didn't work well. We tried using a wireless signal detector, but we encountered a lot of false alarms. So we found some new reports saying that LEDs behind mirrors were often cameras. However, a lot of mirrors now come with LEDs built in. It's just a power light. So we found an app that claimed it could detect hidden cameras, but when we investigated, we found it was detecting magnetic fields. Any electronic device or magnet emits one of these. so we were no close to find a way to detect spy cameras. Let's take a closer look at the structure of a spy camera. The original model is actually an embedded Internet of Things devices. The circuit board usually has a high silicon or Anika or some other ARM processors. The cameras always had a NOR flash device to store files, a Wi-Fi chip, and a micro lens. Each spy camera runs a P2P camera service. So, like we showed in this picture, this is part of our analysis. The devices come in different shapes and sizes. Some have large batteries, some have infrared lenses, some support 4K recording, but in general, they all have a similar structure. So we know what this spy camera looks like and what is inside them. But how are they hidden in everyday objects? Here you can see an ordinary power strip. You can see a small LED light that looks a little unusual. Let's take it apart. It's clear that there are some differences between this and a normal power strip. Why? Because this is a spy camera hiding inside it. It is getting a continuous power supply through transformer, but all the time. But at the same time, the power strip is working normally. So yes, I have been using it in my kitchen and no one noticed that it was a spy camera. Well, let's take a look at the functions of a spy camera. They include the remote control feature, online streaming, and video downloads, support motion alarm. Let's learn how to use this device through a video. Next, we will introduce a method to scan the spy camera using an app. Well, first, let's take a look at how the spy camera is connected to the app and our device. It uses UDP-based P2P technology. Because of the firewall policy, the phone cannot connect directly to the spy camera. Therefore, the mobile phone and the spy camera exchange information through a transit server. This is how they find each other's IP address and net port mapping. Then they send the UDP packets to each other. This is called P2P hole punching. At this point, the app and the camera are connected. and the firewall is no longer a barrier. Now the mobile app can communicate directly with the spy camera. Well, we have mentioned that the spy camera will connect to some specific domain names and IPs. As the picture on the right shows that there are multiple spy cameras requesting DNS. After analyzing the firmware of these spy cameras, we found that the domain names and IPs are hard-coded. This seems to be a very accurate and effective way to detect cameras. But our goal is to find a simple and effective way to discover the camera. This method needs to monitor the network traffic, which requires a root privilege, and not a simple way, so it seems not easy to do.
Okay, we found that all spy cameras have the same functions. You can add cameras by scanning. This process involves manual inputs, QR code scanning, and network scanning. The input and QR code can only be added after the camera is connected to the internet. But all spy cameras still need to be able to perform a network scan. So in order to connect to the device first, you need to add it through the network scanning function. This can be done by listening a network port. Interestingly, this port listening service didn't turn off after the camera connected to the internet. This means that we are able to use this feature to detect cameras. Let's analyze the implementation of this function. This must be service listening on the port waiting for scanning. To do this more quickly, it uses the broadcaster to send packet. Because only UDP protocol can broadcast in intranet. After sending the scanning packet, the camera receives and detects the message format, then returns new data. Then the camera and the app are now connected. Since the app doesn't have any information in advance, the first date package sent doesn't need to contain ID or other information, and Android or iPhones don't need root permission to send UDP broadcast packets. Therefore, we can use this method to scan the camera. First, we need to capture and analyze the packets from all the different apps. These apps are from our previous collection. There are more than 15 kinds of apps, all of which are used frequently. In fact, many of them use the same P2P solution, so the packets they send are the same. Finally, we found that these apps use 4 kinds of scanning packets. By the end of 2019, they could cover 95% of the reported news. We analyze and capture only 4 types of scanning packets that use Python to send broadcast packet to the address 255.255.255.255. Generally, direct access to the UDP port doesn't return packets. However, a return packet with the date will be received if the packet format and the port are correct. For instance, the picture on the right shows that the HD Minicam spy camera under Wi-Fi is being scanned, and then a return packet with the camera ID is received. The speed is breakneck due to the broadcast scanning. We found an exciting phenomenon that even though majority of apps have different names and icons, the scanning packet is the same, especially for the HD Minicam series. More than 50% of the spy camera devices that we buy are the HD Minicam series. HD Minicam was also very common in the apps we collected earlier. Let's have a look at the actual case, such as the one mentioned earlier, involving the 1,600 motel guests we secretly streamed live in South Korea. The analysis of news reports show that these cameras are the HDMI cam series. Besides, they can be judged as the HDMI cam series, where the camera UI in Mr. Hua, as well as the UI image in several news reports. There are more than 1 million downloads on Google Play, examining other application markets. In this slide, we can see that the same developers produce these apps with identical scanning packet. This implies that developers may distribute apps with different names and icons in different channels, but their functions are the same. This may be because manufacturers don't have much energy to develop different spy camera solutions. It's also convenient for us to detect a spy camera. Is it possible to develop a spy camera scanning app? Let's analyze the feasibility of this plan. First, all spy cameras need to be connected to the hotel or the surrounding Wi-Fi, and the password is generally known. Second, we have analyzed a variety of scanning packets, and they don't require root privilege. Therefore, in last year, JPON's spy camera discovery computation, we developed a similar app, which has helped us to discover multiple spy cameras. One interesting is that some renowned security companies copied our code and developed an app with the same functions, and made much publicity on this scanning app. Though through the research engineer, we found that their rules are identical to ours. Even the MAC address and the timestamps are the same.
Okay, here let me introduce some vulnerabilities that we found. Like analyzing other IoT devices, let us analyze the vulnerability of spy cameras. These devices are typically for video recording only without considering security protection. Hence, there are several security issues. We found remote command execution problems in both 4 types of devices. One part is the security problems of embedded Linux systems, such as weak telnet password, FTP server with root privilege, which are associated with the specific hardware. The other part is the security issues associated with the 4 P2P camera solutions. What can we do with these vulnerabilities? Maybe we can help the police to collect evidence or stop these spy cameras from working. First, in the HD Minicam solution, we found 2 high-risk vulnerabilities. One of them is the vulnerability of getting the ID, username, and password, in which we need to send only one packet. The figure is in the upper right corner shows that After sending the packet, we get a ID, username, and password information. We can utilize this information to log into the spy camera directly, which is equivalent to owning this camera at the same time. Now we can only use it in the intranet as the server of HD Minicam has been stopped. Another vulnerability is that the RECAction.CGI has a remote command execution. Therefore, we can execute any commands by just visit a URL. In the P2P cam viewer solution, we found a command injection vulnerability. The POC above also caused a RCE vulnerability with root privilege. This is a vulnerability we found in the CamView solution. It has an anonymous FTP service with write permission. Hence, we can get a shell in various ways. Okay, now let us introduce some additional detection methods. Well, we found that sometimes the manufacturer's information of the MAC address is the same, although the device hardware is different. We suspect that the majority of devices are made from the same manufacturers and utilize the same Wi-Fi chip. Hence, we can obtain the MAC address to help determine whether it is a spy camera or not. If the MAC address is blacklisted, it will be very suspicious. In the low right corner is a news picture of the 1,600,000 South Korean guests. These MAC addresses are all blacklisted. Also, we can scan some unique ports in the intranet, such as port 80 and port 554. However, there may be some false positives. Sometimes we can even directly access port 554 to watch the video. Let us look at the electromagnetic signal detection. Traditionally, there are several false positives. However, the spy camera requires remote control and Wi-Fi. Therefore, why don't we just use a Wi-Fi signal for detection? In order to detect the Wi-Fi signal, we need a network card that supports monitor mode. We can use RSSI value for Wi-Fi signal detection. Let's get close to everything in the house. If the value of RSSI increases, it proves that there is a Wi-Fi equipment here. So we can also get the device's MAC address and detect it as per the blacklist we mentioned earlier. Some cameras have a night mode feature in order to work at night. For instance, the alarm clock camera module has an infrared night version. Hence, we can turn off the lights and detect them with our mobile phone camera. However, the mobile phone has a filter. Therefore, the best way is to utilize an infrared camera. For instance, the infrared camera we modified on the right from a Sony camera. Let us look at the detection by the metal detector and AC tester. It can be utilized as a helper method to find the AC power supply, because the camera needs a permanent power supply. For some reason, the spy camera's temperature is generally very high. Therefore, in this house, we can use a thermal imager to detect it and quickly find hot spaces. We purchased some portable thermal imagers such as Flare One, which is a little expensive, but it worked very well. We also can use Wi-Fi real-time decryption to decrypt all the network traffic by analyzing the spy camera's characteristic in the traffic. We can also utilize IPS, IDS, or other network equipments for network traffic and analysis.
Okay, there is some good news. Through various efforts, the RDMI server has been shut down, and currently all the RDMI are invalid because the server domain and the IP in the device are hard-coded. Furthermore, the Guangdong police cracked China's largest illegal selling and buying of spy camera. For instance, RDMI cams can't be downloaded via the App Store. However, there is still some bad news. We found that the majority of all the systems are still working. For instance, the P2P cam viewer, which has 1 million downloads, is still working, and the server is still running. Besides, some new systems such as the HD Wi-Fi Cam Pro seems to be very popular recently. Moreover, we found some new attack methods, and hence we still need to continue researching. In summary, a spy camera is terrible, and the traditional method has limited effects. However, after the security research, we can easily detect them in contrast with the efforts of majority of countries and researchers. The problem has been improved. We believe that with all members' joint efforts, spy cameras will be gradually eradicated. Okay, that's the end.